Hi, Vincent.
Hello?
Well, Vincent.
Hey,
Welcome.
what's going on? You said something was happening? You felt like something was happening?
Well, well, I suppose. Did I mention to you on that I'd spoken to David Duke? Maybe it is a bit of a non-event. I
Well,
don't
I
know.
did watch. No, I watched your table talk a lot of it. With a lot of it, I watched like an hour of it or something like that with Steve, and they were going after you. And I know they were bringing up a lot of the fact that you were on David Duke, and I guess people are now triggered by the fact that you and David Duke were discussing, things. How did you get on David Duke?
Well, somebody said you should talk to David Duke. So I, being the obliging person I am, I did. So I stayed up till midnight, which is when it started in the States. 7 p.m. I think. Maybe that was anyway. So I got to speak to him, and so I mean the bit that was on the radio, was quite polite. But it was afterwards that it got a bit heated when it got a bit shouty. But basically, I think a lot of people don't get the balance right. So I asked this question, and then you get a very, 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 very long answer that and then you sort of know it's not going to be a dialogue, and it made me miss you. It's like, well, at least Vincent can have a dialogue. He doesn't talk forever. Um, so um, so it wasn't towards the end that I hoped to challenge it, and of course he wasn't happy, and said the usual things like, "Oh, do you know what the Jews think of us and the Talmud?" And then they made a big thing about my shiksa avatar. And I thought, should I change it or shouldn't I? And I thought it would be cowardly to change it, and it may be even inappropriate to have this one on. So I just left it, and then they were accusing me of being a Jew, and I don't that I didn't know what was happening. And I said, look, yes, I know it's not flattering for a woman to be called, well, a Gentile woman to be called a shiksa, but I mean, basically, it used to mean that some, sexy, slutty, Gentile woman that Jewish parents wish their Jewish son wasn't interested in, you know. I think it's it's a usual idea of like, oh well, modest women don't get a look in because all men can look for are cleavages and thighs and legs, short skirts, and we're not allowed to wear that. So our men aren't interested in us, kind of thing. So so I mean, when David Duke was saying to me, "Oh, do you know what it means? It means slut. It means," it's like, yeah, I kind of knew that. Um, but I don't know. I mean, they expected me to be so angry about things that I already knew about and was clearly not that angry about it. And then he went on about the genocide in Gaza. And, I'm sorry, I just, don't want to talk about that.
Well, I mean, it shouldn't when they allow that to. I mean, look, I'm interested in the. look, I look. I don't know. First of all, I don't even know if that attack on Israel was real. But even if it was real, does Israel have the right? Well, Israel shouldn't even be there to begin with. To be honest with you, it's just the whole thing. I just believe in defunding Israel and then just calling it a day. Stop giving them money, and then if the two want to fight all day long with their own funds and their own bombs and their own rockets, then let them have at it. But excuse me, don't
But
take sides.
America wants it to be there. I mean, that is really the thing. People don't get it that Israel is an American colony, and America wants it there. It's its, foothold in the Middle East to tell all the, oil-rich Muslim countries, we're keeping an eye on you. and watch it, you guys, and if you care about the commentary on American foreign policy, it is that America is using Israel to start a war with Iran and maybe Lebanon. I mean, it doesn't even make sense, but this is apparently what U.S. foreign policy is about. And then it's going to start a war with China. It doesn't even make sense, but that's what they're doing. And maybe it is true that they have gone mad. And no sense can be derived from it, except that maybe America is sort of like a person who wants to commit suicide by cop because it just doesn't know what to do anymore. I mean, there are all these unresolved issues. It's like, well, if I wanted to have an empire and a global one, I would actually want it to be easy to run, and I would want everybody to like me and think, it's better that I run their country than they run their own. That is the height of successful imperialism. Not when your own people are saying you shouldn't be running the country, Biden. But one of the things that I thought was cooking was this tweet, not by Alexander Dugin, but somebody following his Telegram group said, well, apparently Dugin was saying, "I've just come back from China. It's wonderful. We should become a one-party state like China." And this was dated 31st of January, and I know this Chinese guy who's sort of it's almost like a religion for him. He's sort of going around, trying to convert everyone to historical materialism. And I think what's happened is that he actually spoke to Dugin. I don't know if it was personally or not, but he's just sort of constantly on the space and hosting it, co-hosting it, and so he gets known. And and Dugin was on a space at the weekend, and he got to speak to Dugin, and so I guess he's kind of really excited that Dugin spoke to him, and also Dugin went to China and he gave a series of lectures, because Dugin has basically been very, very what's the word, efficient in propagating his view. Like there's the English Dugin Telegram group, and then the all and in all the other languages, and on Twitter, and he still has a presence on Facebook, and he's being very efficient. And the thing is, people agree with him. And one of the things he says is that we Russians must unite with the Muslim world to defeat America and its evil ideologies. And I guess increasingly, these countries that he's targeting, such as China, are agreeing with him. And sadly for the neocons, lots of Westerners are agreeing with him. I mean, obviously, a lot of Europeans don't fancy being conscripted to die for the war in Ukraine. And this is being, proposed by Boris Johnson. I don't know if you're aware of that.
What, Boris Johnson wants to conscript British
Well,
people
he
to
was
fight?
just saying, wouldn't it be nice if would you like to join the armed forces? It's a wonderful thing to, build your career on becoming a member of the armed forces. And this has been basically interpreted as the prelude to conscription. Because, I mean, we know that in Ukraine, men are just randomly rounded up and sent to fight the Russians. And the commentators say that this is all America's doing. America just wants to get the stupid Europeans who haven't got a mind of their own to throw their own resources away on making life difficult for the Russians, when obviously, if they had any sense at all, they would want to be friends with Russia and get cheap energy from Russia. And
Right.
yeah, so but I've been saying for ages. I know that Dugin is considered, well, dangerous by I guess security services. So and his daughter was well was killed because it was a failed assassination on him. Why do they want to assassinate professor of politics in Russia, suggesting that he has a lot of power. But I mean, I think what he says is, well, I don't, I'm just a politics professor. Nobody really listens to me, really, either. But I think what has happened for Dugin is that people like Richard Spencer have been, going on this Nazbol thing, right? And so they've been talking up Dugin, and this might have made the security services nervous about Dugin and think to themselves, he's got to go. But I mean, what I know from white nationalists is that they don't like Dugin because Dugin is into Eurasianism, and you think, why wouldn't he be into Eurasianism? Because Russia is an empire. It has, I think, more of Russia is actually in Asia than in Europe. So he's not going to say, well, we're going to hate on all the non-whites in our empire, because that would be tantamount to declaring war on them. And probably the white birth rate in Russia isn't doing too well either. So of course he can't say that, but a lot of people say, oh, but Dugin's, he doesn't care about us, and he's pro race mixing and whatever. But I mean, the fact is, even the Jews are into race mixing, because there is no, because in theory anyone can convert to Judaism. And you can't deny that, because one of the latest things that Israel has done is say, you can convert to Judaism through Reform Judaism. And this is very upsetting to the Orthodox community, because they have consistently said that the Reform Jews are heretical Jews and shouldn't be treated as Jews, but because Gentiles always sort of liked them because they were more assimilated, and I mean, they were the ones who tried hardest to fit in with Gentiles. And so most Gentiles think Jews are Reformed Jews. Well, the Orthodox community, who knew they weren't supposed to mix with Gentiles, were basically marginalized, and nobody listens to them. Because, really, they have no power even amongst Jews, these ultra-Orthodox rabbis, because I mean, you can imagine if you were a Jew living in the West, you think, well, I want to be mainstream. I want to enjoy, the pleasures and opportunities the West has to offer. I'm certainly not going to listen to some rabbi telling me what I can't do. And so, people are Jews are basically married out, or kind of, try to be half in and half out by, I guess, wearing the kippah, or, occasionally doing Jewish things just to remember their Jewish identity, but not really following, what they would follow if they were being properly Jewish. I mean, it's very, okay. I live in Britain, where standards of conversion are the highest, anywhere else, because I have a girlfriend who converted to Judaism, and well, she lived in the UK, and she told me that Britain is the worst place to convert to Judaism, because of the fact of the chief rabbi. The chief rabbi of Britain is also the chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth, meaning the Jews of Imperial Britain. I mean, it used to be called Imperial Jewry, so it meant, all the Jews in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, or any British territory. Those Jews will be looking to the chief rabbi and taking instructions from him, and so it's a large part of the world, and basically these ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel have declared Chief Rabbi Mervis to be a heretic because he collaborated with the government in compiling the LGBT handbook for Jewish schools.
Hold on, what? Yeah, well, I mean, it would just be, unfortunately, I do get frustrated because all this is so much easier when you're a Jehovah's Witness, because the organization has a list of people, number one, who are baptized. First of all, you can't just walk in and call yourself a Jehovah's Witness. You cannot do that. You have to actually get baptized. This means you actually answered a rubric of questions correctly, that you know the ideology, and that you put in field service out in time, going out and trying to convert people. So you have to meet these standards to get baptized in the first place. And then if you don't keep it up, you get struck off. You get put on, it's called inactivity. So first of all, if you break any major rule, like have sex or smoke or whatever, you get disfellowship. But if you go so far as just not attending meetings or not going out in field service, you are put on an inactivity list.
Yeah, so you have standards. Jehovah's Witnesses have standards, unlike the churches.
It would just be easier if these Jews would stop calling themselves Jews and just be like, well, we just have nothing to do with it anymore. We're not really practicing it. And the world would be a whole lot easier if everyone just had standards like that, where it was like, okay, are you in or are you out? Like, are you doing this or are you not doing this? It's just like, and Jews, have this big, what's it called? Culture of being half in, half out, and still being able to call themselves Jews.
Yes, a bit like the cultural Christian. So it's not just the Jews.
Too. Yeah, it's like Catholics, to be half in, half out, but you're still a Catholic. You know what I mean? No, I mean, if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you're smoking cigarettes, if anyone finds out about it, you're out. You're out. You're not in. You get struck off the registry. You get disfellowshipped. You get taken out. Just no chance. You know what I mean? Unless you repented and said, I'm sorry and I'm not going to do it again, and then you stopped or whatever. Or if you were caught practicing homosexuality, you would either have to give it up or leave. There, you would only have two options. It would be one or the other.
Yes, and the thing is, people obviously don't like these rules. They like, saying yes and no at the same time, and Duvid has tried to make a ideology out of it. So, but that is obviously the problem, and obviously you need some kind of leadership to say, right, this has got to stop, and you have to be prepared to do it. And really everybody's sort of happy to kind of do their own thing. It's really like the hippie movement, these Jews and these Muslims. It's actually Christians who have some kind of, hierarchical order. Well, certainly Jehovah's Witnesses more than, the Catholic Church. But at least, nominally, the head of the church is, the Anglican Church is the king, or the monarch, or the Archbishop of Canterbury, who can sack him at any time. I mean, the monarch can sack the Archbishop of Canterbury any time, but of course they don't, and there are all sorts of historical and political reasons for that, and so I have at least identified the problem, to a systemic problem of not having this essential thing called a leadership structure. But, nobody's interested because they don't really want to be leader, and they don't want to be put to the trouble of following their leader. And that's why
Well, but
nothing is
they don't
working.
also they don't want things to become too crystallized, because when things get crystallized and people have something to rebel against and have something to say. I mean, look, the thing is that when you have these open systems, you get more people involved and more people wanting to be part of it. Very few people want to be Jehovah's Witnesses because it's very crystallized. It's so like every itty bitty little thing is written out for you, and it's like this code you have to keep up with, and you can't just do it half-assed. And like, if you do it that way, you're not going to have a lot of followers. If you open it up, if Jehovah's Witnesses were just
But
like,
in a way,
well,
we're talking about quality and numbers. Which do you want?
well, I go for quality.
Because basically that's the choice. Your audio's not good.
I'm looking for quality. I know I can't get quantity. I'm not looking for quantity.
Yeah. But some people, it's like people who just want likes, right? On their video. But I think our content is far better than theirs. But so basically, it's a structural problem. The political problem of the West is a structural problem and a systemic problem. So the structure is like, I would say, in order to stand up, you need a skeleton. Otherwise, you're just a worm crawling on the ground. And in order to, so you have the skeleton, you've got all the muscles, and they have to be kind of linked in order to, make you walk and do stuff. And this isn't in operation as far as I can tell. And it's sort of like the mind is not there. The mind is not correctly apprehending things. It wants to think forever and ever, it seems, everything is yes and no. Because they don't want to do anything. They've decided it's better not to do anything, so everything is yes and no at the same time. And that's why you can't get anything to work. And that's why you get this sort of putrefying degeneracy of people complaining but not actually wanting the solution, which is in a way very feminine. I mean, you may have heard of women who cry about whatever, and then you give them advice and they're really offended at you. How dare you tell me to leave my husband or leave my job or leave my boyfriend or whatever? I only wanted a shoulder to cry on. I don't want a solution. Because the cure is worse than the disease. So basically, the problem is that even without having transitioned or taken any hormones or had any operations, the men have turned to women. They just haven't accepted that this is the reality of what has happened. I mean, it's so annoying with David Duke's website. It just doesn't work. It's like, why doesn't it work? Why don't you want it to work? Why don't you care that it works?
What do you mean it doesn't work at all?
You can't even contact him on the contact page. So basically, so I complained, and somebody gave me the number of this person, and I said, oh, I'd like to, and he didn't respond at all. And then somebody said, oh, I'll speak to him next week. So, I mean, obviously, I have a few questions I wanted to ask him. And I thought the quickest way to ask him these questions is to just email them to him, and I can't even do that. It's like, are we back in the time of the telephone again?
I'm on his website
I mean,
now.
it's just the incompetence of it, the administrative incompetence. I mean, it's not that hard. So obviously, Duke is a boomer who, has boomer tech issues. He doesn't really care, and he doesn't really know what's going on. And I mean, the impression I have of him is that he, is that he's actually a very kind man.
I'm on here. He's all into Christmas. I didn't know. Is he Christian? He's Christian?
Yes.
Oh, I
So
thought he
he's
was.
Christian. So
I
he
thought he
still
was.
doesn't get it. He still doesn't get it. And I have to start with him, you know, about the Trinity, and he'll just not get it for, 10 more years or something. Yeah, because, with older people, you have to let them talk, they can't actually stop. You sort of talk to them, and it seems halfway sensible, and then you get them onto their hot topic, their bee in their bonnet, and you can't stop them, and you're trying to say, look, I've heard this, I know this, and you can't stop them, and they can't actually press a pause or stop button. They've got to go all the way to the end, and it will take several minutes. I mean, and I suppose, if you want to be heard, you'll have to be shouting at people. And then, of course, that's not conducive to good, to good relations. I mean, I'm afraid most people are just not up to a dialogue. I mean, or they think a dialogue is, yeah, I speak and then I finish, and, there's a 4-second delay, and then you speak and then you finish. Even, and what you say may not even be remotely related to what I just said before.
Oh, he's anti-weed. I'm looking at it right now. He's anti-weed.
Yeah, I asked him. One of the questions I asked him is, what would you do if you were president? And I can't even remember his answer, but it wasn't particularly scary. But the horror of it is that he is sort of demonized as this sort of monster. When really, it's just that he doesn't get it. It's like, I think I did get around to saying, look, the post-war narrative is that we all have to worship Jews because the narrative of the Anglo-American Empire is that they are the people specially appointed to protect the Jews from Nazis and anti-Semites forevermore.
Who is America?
Well, it's unofficial, so nobody actually said it. But you see, the post-war narrative of Britain was that Britain sacrificed its empire to protect the Jews. So while the people who lived through the war were alive, of course they couldn't talk about it too much. They would sort of change things around, like talk about the Judeo-Christian heritage of the West. And I remember my history teacher saying, using that phrase, and I thought, what does that mean? And it sounds a strange set of words. But then later I realized it's like, well, we can't use Christendom anymore because Christendom ended in 1918, really. If we know what Christendom actually meant. What do you think it means, Vincent?
Christendom?
Yes.
Well, I'm going, look, Jehovah's Witnesses say that they are Christian, but they are not part of Christendom.
Exactly, because Jehovah's Witnesses are an American creation, and you wouldn't have existed if you were in Europe, because you would have been, persecuted out of existence. It's only with the First Amendment that America just sort of, had all those cults flourishing in America, because people could create their own religion and they wouldn't be smashed by the church. I mean, that's what's so special about America, and people don't get it. And the reason why Europeans hate their religion is because historically they've been burnt at the stake and endured religious persecution and whatever. But anyway, Christendom is just a short form of a Europe of Christian kingdoms. That's what it means. That's all it means, really. But it has, it's not Christian republics, but Christian kingdoms. And it's like, Yeah, and of course, people will say, "Oh, this wasn't what we learned at school when we were doing history. We learned about the Nazis, and that was it. And we just don't know anything else." But this is it. Christianity has been breaking down. I mean, if you look at 1918, you will see that the most powerful kingdoms of Europe have stopped being kingdoms. So the most powerful kingdom of Europe was France. And then in 1918, Russia committed regicide and also basically the entire royal family of the Romanovs were exterminated by the Red Guards. They killed them all. I mean, they herded them into a room, I think in a basement, and just shot them. And in 1918, also, not so violently, the Kaiser abdicated. So, and if you think of these countries as the most powerful Christian kingdoms of Europe, it's over and out. And then, of course, the interwar years were all about, well, what we're going to do now. Oh, yes, fascism. Oh, yes, Nazism. We don't like liberalism, do we? No, not if we're German. We reject the Weimar Republic and its stupid liberalism. But actually, Hitler didn't even formally tear up the constitution of the Weimar Republic. He only suspended it. So even Hitler didn't dare. You did, but yet nobody sort of, talks about this. And even historians will probably say, "Oh, I never heard of such a thing."
Of what?
But
Regicide? Of what? Heard of such
they never heard of the extinction of Christendom.
Well, no,
Okay, what I was talking about, this new form of words that my history teacher, Mr. Beating, as I said, about the Judeo-Christian heritage of the West. So he started talking about this, and I thought it was kind of new, and he obviously thought it was new too, and he didn't like it. But he was sort of saying that I think the context in which he said it was that people need, Europeans need to know their Bible stories, or they won't have this Judeo-Christian heritage that are supposed to be that they are supposed to have inherited. And he was saying they don't, children these days, students these days, don't even know their Bible stories, and he thought it was a terrible thing. And he said, well, you don't have to believe in it, but you just need to know what the hell they are.
well,
And most
no.
people didn't.
Well, the point was to just get that out of the mainstream culture, and yes, make it something that no longer has hegemony. And yes, I'm glad that you can't just go into a school anymore and bring up a Bible story and everyone knows what you're talking about, or thinks that it's even appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to bring up Bible stories in public schools. It's just not appropriate.
Okay, but I mean, the phenomenon I have noticed recently is that America, Hollywood has just been, churning out Marvel, superhero movie after superhero movie. So this has kind of become the new gods of America. And this is part of the American myth that is sort of rolled out, throughout the West. But it's like, well, it's not enough, and it's not, holy, and people don't really believe in it, and it's not that old, and
Well,
whether or not you,
think that just because something's not old, I mean, Islam is the youngest of the four religions. Yet, in your opinion, actually Islam is the youngest of the five major world religions. Yet, in your opinion, it's the cat's meow. I mean,
yes, because you know what the Quran does? It basically says, "Hey Jews, hey Christians, we acknowledge your prophets. We're going to repeat the stories of your religion. So come to us. Come to us. Come on over." So the repetition is intended to be, we're not, competing with you so much that we're going to say we're completely different from you, because the premise of Islam is that it's all the same God. Because we know it talks about Adam and Eve and Abraham and all, it's like, yes, Jews, we know all about your stuff. We acknowledge your stories. And yes, Christians, virgin birth, Jesus, we acknowledge that. Come on over. And that is the power of it, because you could be saying, oh, they just create a completely different God and call him a different thing, and make up more stories that are nothing to do with Adam and Eve, and they would have lost the power of it. So Islam is just saying, we're going to do it better, and you're going to get to heaven quicker through Islam than through your crazy Judaism and your absurd Christianity. It is actually very clever, if you think about it. I mean, I know
but
you say, oh, you
it
just
breaks your
copy
rule that
paragraphs and stuff.
it breaks your rule that it needs to be old and that it needs to be first, and all these other kinds of things. And there's obviously choices that are much older than Islam, and I mean, obviously, like, the New Testament is newer than the Torah. The Noahide laws are older than Islam, and it's still the same deal. Islam has Christian, what's it called in it? Islam has Christian storytelling in it. There's Christianity in Islam.
Oh yeah. I mean, somebody just reminded me that the Quran quotes Jesus more than anything, and I have to look that up. And there's a chapter devoted to Mary. So I'll have to read that again, because that just sort of went above. I just didn't care about that. But perhaps I will read it later. So it is really very clever. And I guess what I'm doing is making the arguments that these stupid Muslims haven't been making. And they're still going to ignore me, I guess, because they can't bear to think that a non-Muslim has thought about all the arguments that they never thought of. Yeah, because part of my narrative is that, well, if God exists, he would curse Jews, Christians, and Muslims because they've been so disobedient, and their punishment is World War III. And because of the global idolatry that Christians have spread around the world, that the Jews were so helpless to prevent, and ditto the Muslims. And it's kind of worse for the Muslims, because they have they are commanded in chapter 18, verse 4, which says, admonish those who claim that God has begotten a son. So, because they have had such clear instructions and they didn't ever do it, they're more to blame than the Jews, will probably say, oh, but you know what the Christians did to us, and we're only very few. How could you expect us to tell them anything?
I don't know. Well, maybe if God exists, God's, Jehovah's Witnesses always talk about, what's it called? Jehovah's Spirit. Like, they always talk about if something doesn't work, it's because Jehovah's Spirit wasn't over it. This didn't, the other nations weren't able to accomplish this because Jehovah's Spirit wasn't over it. This Jehovah's Spirit's not over that. That didn't work because Jehovah's Spirit wasn't over it. Like, maybe.
Oh, right. So is it the Holy Spirit or something different?
They say Jehovah's Spirit. Well, they don't believe in the Trinity, so the Holy Spirit. I'm a little confused about what the Holy Spirit is in Jehovah's, but they don't say Holy Spirit. They say Jehovah's Spirit. And that would make more sense, since they don't believe in the Trinity. It's Jehovah's Spirit. It's not another entity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I suppose the Holy Spirit would be, sent by God or something.
Well, the thing is that what I'm saying is that if you were thinking about God, you would just say, obviously, God's Holy Spirit wasn't over Islam because they never did what they were supposed to do. That's what, like, that's where my thinking would be, is being raised Jehovah's Witnesses. Something didn't happen, it's because God didn't favor you. God didn't have favor over you, and so it went wrong. They would blame that on anything that went wrong. Jehovah's Holy Spirit wasn't, and they would blame other religions all the time and say, well, obviously Jehovah's Holy Spirit is not over them because they're not accomplishing X, Y, Z. What they
Yeah.
have a point. They have a point. Like they are the only really religion on earth that disfellowships you if you really do something wrong. And they'll say, well, no one else is doing that because they don't have Jehovah's Holy Spirit. And so obviously the
So you
Muslims
must have
didn't
done
have.
something wrong, or you didn't do, that sort of idea. It was God didn't favor your enterprise or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a kind of obvious idea, really, because the idea is that, well, God gave these rules for people to follow. What do you think He's going to do if you don't follow them? Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, but maybe that was snuck in. But obviously, God's spirit was not over Islam. You know what I mean? It's
Well, yeah,
obvious.
because they didn't obey, or they just obeyed the bits that they fancied obeying, and then they ignored the bits that they, cherry picking. So,
Yeah,
so
but I'm just saying that what if the argument would be that God obviously never made the Quran and never made Islam because His Holy Spirit didn't show through it. It never represented His true Holy Spirit. It never did anything that it was supposed to do.
well, I mean, you could say that these Muslims, they didn't follow the recipe correctly. So, I mean, there's no point saying, oh, yes, I do have a recipe, but I'm not going to look at it, though. I'm going to cook this dish and do it any way I like. Oops, it's horrible. Nobody wants to eat it. It's that kind of thing. I mean, are you going to blame the recipe book that you never even looked at? I mean, okay, another analogy would be, I give you instructions, I tell you the way to San Jose, you never even remembered it, you just went anywhere you like, and you went, I don't know, you arrived in San Antonio or whatever. Is it
Okay,
my fault?
you're blaming the people, but why did it work with the Jehovah's Witnesses? I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses have instructions, and the people follow it. It's just it's just somebody made. Look, what they would say is God made sure that the instructions were followed with the Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what they would say. They would say, obviously, we're God's chosen people because God favored us, and it's obvious because we're the only ones who are following the Bible and no one else is doing it. And obviously their thing would just say the proof is in the pudding. Oh, or whatever. The proof is in the pudding is what they would always say. Well, oh no, the very Christian, you will tell them by the fruits they bear. And that's very Christian, that it's the fruit that you
Know
bear.
them by their fruits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Islam has borne ill fruit. And there's obviously, when it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to obviously admonishing people who had a son and all that kind of stuff, Islam has not done very well. And there
No,
would
it
be things.
hasn't. And if you look at the history, I mean, it's actually not that hard to work out where they went wrong. When they had harems and you know, and I think the punishment for these Muslims for not obeying chapter 18, verse 4, as regards the Europeans, is that they were attacked by the Crusaders. Because if they converted the Europeans nicely, if they cared about the Europeans, and the Europeans would have become Muslim, and then they wouldn't have attacked the Muslims so horribly, and then the Muslims wouldn't have had to endure all that Western imperialism that they're still under. So, well, you could put it that way. And as for the Jews, it's like, well, what are you for? What For what purpose did God make you His chosen people? To do what? And they won't be able to say. I mean, other than
Yes,
something to do with the Noahide laws.
yes, that's it. That's the answer. That is
Yeah,
the
and they won't do it properly because they won't rank the four Gentile religions.
You're the only person. You're the only
I
person on
really think
earth
these
that
Muslims should
you're
be
the only
paying
person on
me to
earth
do their
that
bloody
thinks that.
dawah for them.
The Noahide laws were created before Islam even existed. So the idea that they were put here to rank the four Gentile religions when they had already their system in place before Islam even arrived is absurd.
No, okay. If Jews have any kind of purpose at all, their purpose would be to warn Gentiles away from idolatry. That, the sort of light unto nations, that kind of thing.
Which Islam is idolatry because you've created fasts, you've created laws that were not there for you, and you've created laws for yourselves that were not there for you. There's no law for Gentiles to not eat pork. Okay, there's no law for
It's in
that.
the Quran.
No, but the thing is that you created a new law for the Gentiles that you weren't supposed to, and so that's idolatry.
Is this what you're accusing Muslims of doing?
I'm not the only one who accuses Muslims. It's not an accusation that Muslims came up with new laws for themselves and new customs and new holidays. That's not an accusation. That's true.
Well, no. Muslims would just say, well, we didn't make it up. It's from God.
No, but
Muhammad didn't write
yeah,
it.
of course,
It's
yes, but from everyone else's perspective, you just added to Torah for yourselves, and so you're idolaters.
Well, I mean, Jews would say that, but actually, well, Islamophobic Jews would say that, but actually, Jews are allowed to pray with Muslims in mosques, but forbidden to enter
Okay, but
and
Maimonides
enter
said
churches.
Maimonides, it's forbidden to practice Islam. You're getting away with it right now, but it is not permissible to practice Islam. It's not it's not open. It's not physical idolatry in that you're not bowing down before idols, but it breaks the laws of idolatry because you add to Torah and you subtract from Torah and you create holidays for yourselves and fasts for yourselves and pilgrimages for yourselves and things like that.
Okay, I mean, I would say the Muslim stuff. Well, okay, I have a few ideas about how it should be done. Um, and I'm happy with Gentiles celebrating Jewish festivals.
Well,
So
yes,
I wouldn't.
have their own festivals that they shouldn't have been creating. There was no need for it. It was just a man-made addition, of
Well, I mean, I guess everybody wants, their own holy days, which is what, the word holiday came from. Um,
yeah.
so
Well, you're not
what,
supposed
what
to do
Jews are
that.
saying, what Jews seem to be saying is that we want Gentiles to celebrate our festivals. Yes, is that's
No,
what
no,
they
not
appear to be
really.
saying.
No, they don't want you celebrating the Sabbath at all. But I mean, it depends on the Jew that you're talking to.
Keeping.
No, I think most Jews would prefer Gentiles have no holidays.
Well, I mean, they must know that Gentiles are just sort of, not going to have any of that. It's like, we're not going to be
Well, but
reduced to
then
this
don't go
third-class
calling
status
yourself
with
Noahide.
no
Don't go
holy
asking
days,
people
and we
to
can't
rank
even
you.
celebrate
Don't go
yours.
asking people. Don't go asking people to rank you according to the Noahide laws when you don't even meet the criteria. When you don't even meet the first criteria. It's like
The thing is, it doesn't matter. If Orthodox rabbis don't think Islam is quite kosher enough for them, fine, but they can't think of anything better, and that will have to do.
Noahidism is better. Yes, Noahidism is better.
No, obviously, Noahidism is the standard by which they would measure the righteousness of Gentile religions. So, the 7-star, thing that you were talking about, it's a 7-star scoring system. But on the question of the no-height laws, I mean, I think, whoever thought of it was really a genius because, really on the surface of it, no decent, honest Gentile is going to say, I don't agree with having a court and legal system. I don't agree with not eating an animal while it's still alive.
Yeah, you always go for the very basic ones, like, oh, murder, theft, idolatry, blasphemy, and homosexuality is all that people care about. I mean, you always hide that by saying, oh, you want to murder people? You want to steal from people? No. Let's talk about the three that actually matter.
Yes, okay. Blasphemy, idolatry, and sexual immorality, because sexual immorality will be the one, yes, fought over.
And idolatry and blasphemy, well, for awake, aware, quick Christians, yes, idolatry and blasphemy becomes an issue.
Sorry, what was that?
For awake, aware Christians, idolatry and blasphemy is an issue.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Under the no-hide laws, if you are a Christian who is aware of what is going on, yes, you are going to care about anti-idolatry and anti-blasphemy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going to go the whole hog about idolatry and blasphemy, the Christianity will come to be discussed. But it's just the wording of the words, because Christians should actually say, okay, we can't argue about no idolatry or no blasphemy, because those are the 10 commandments, which are contained in the book of Deuteronomy, and it is part of the Old Testament that we culturally appropriated from the Jews. So the Christians, having taken it from the Jews, would have to say, yes, okay. I mean, we can't argue with that, because we implicitly accept whatever the Old Testament says, because they culturally appropriated the Old Testament in order to make it their scripture. But I suppose Jews might just sort of get away with it, saying, oh yeah, the Christians aren't gonna smell a rat, because the no-hide laws in many ways echo the 10 commandments that the Christians stole from us. But closer examination would mean that the Christians will say, well, hey, why aren't you Christian then? Why do you have your strange religion? And further inquiry would reveal that Jews have thought Christians to be idolaters who worship and executed blasphemer, guilty of blaspheming against the God of Israel. And I sort of feel I'm the only one talking about it, and
well, because people are not
they
that
should have done it, ages ago.
People are not that principled anymore, and also, Christians look. If Christians confused the concept of idolatry for everyone. The point is, okay, yes, Christians would tell you God is not supposed to be many, but then they have a Trinity. But look, with Judaism and Islam, God cannot be many, God cannot take shape. So if God is many or God takes shape, it's idolatry, and you don't do it, and it's very clear.
Yes, I know. So it's all these theological arguments are very important. They are world-changing. Because if you could get Christians to admit that, they've been tricked all those centuries ago, since the beginning of, since the year 380, when the Edict of Thessalonica was passed, it'll be kind of difficult, and they'll be very upset. But there it is. Idolatry is a worship of anything that isn't God. And I've debated with enough Christians to know that their standard response to that is, it's not idolatry to worship Jesus if he is indeed God. That's the best they can do. And then they will disappear before you can ask the next question, which is, how is Jesus God? When did that happen? When did that be? And then they'll say things like, "Oh, there was no time. He was always God." And then they'll run away before, how can that be? Are you saying a man created the universe and his mum was Mary, who was a virgin? They won't. I mean, why do you think heretic burning was practiced? Because they can't answer these questions. They couldn't answer these questions. And do you ever think of these heretics who just knew they would they would get burnt at the stake, but they just couldn't stand it anymore? They couldn't shut up about these questions that were never answered. And I think we should acknowledge these heretics who were burnt at the stake. We should, commemorate their suffering.
Oh, Claire, I think that's just PR for you. You don't really care about them. You just care
I do
about
care about them.
you just care about getting whatever
I do care
profit
about
out
them.
of their
I think I probably would have ended up like them. That's why I care about them. You too, Vincent, you would have ended up being burnt at the stake if you were, well, living in a Christian kingdom under an absolute monarch. Just admit it. Do you think you would have shut up about the Trinity? You wouldn't be able to. Is silence assent?
Let's say it again. What?
Is silence assent? I'm saying that you would not have been able to shut up about the Trinity once you had got it into your head that it was nonsense, even though you were told that you would be burned at the stake. Let's imagine you
That was
living
my
an
conviction. Yes.
absolute monarch. Would you have been able to shut up about it?
Well, that was my conviction. Yes, but also you're talking about the acausal realm. So if you're talking about that, anything is possible. I mean, it's nonsense anyway. So okay, so in the acausal realm, three can be one and one can be three. I mean, it's the acausal realm. That's like you're telling me that there's an imaginary world somewhere, and you're saying, but in that world, in that imaginary world, something is happening that's not logical. And who cares?
No, I'm not saying that it ever happened or that such a thing ever existed. Obviously, I've told you why I think the Trinity was created, so that Christians could win the theological debate over Jews, because the Jews would go up to Christians and say, "Hey, Christian, what about this Jesus you worship? The one who was convicted of blasphemy and who was crucified, and what was that? The son of the Father? Who's the Father? The God of Israel? We have the more powerful God. You believe in a pack of lies." Until eventually, the Christians realized that they couldn't take it anymore. I mean, Judas was the one who told me about Pope Sylvester I, who was responsible for kicking out the Jews from Jerusalem. I'm sure the Jews just couldn't stop saying that to the Christians, and the Christians didn't have an answer, and Pope Sylvester kicked the Jews out of Jerusalem, persuaded Constantine the Great to kick the Jews out of Jerusalem. That was the reason. I know it's not recorded, but we can work it out, can't we?
They can't figure it out. It's just look.
No, we actually have the makings of a best-selling book.
The burning at the stake of Christians for denying the Trinity?
No, okay. I've solved the mystery of the Trinity.
Yeah, you told me that they wanted God. They wanted Jesus to be equivalent with God.
Yes, because otherwise the Jews would say, this Jesus you worship, well, he's low in status to what, the Father? Yes, the Father. The Father and the Holy Ghost and the Son. the Father comes before the Son. Yes, without the Father, there would be no Son. The Son owes his existence to the Father. I mean, think of the logic of it. Think how the Jews would have just completely blown this house of cards of an idea away. And that was why they had to leave Jerusalem.
I don't know why. I have no idea why these people would even think or care about these things. But people are dumb.
Well, the thing is,
I
they
mean,
were creating a religion which is full of holes.
why couldn't Jesus just be a Messiah? I don't understand what's wrong with being a Messiah. Why does he have to be God? I mean, they should have. Well, they should have just told the Jews, well, he's a Messiah, and your Messiah is not supposed to be God. The Jewish Messiah is not supposed to be God.
I
Their
don't know.
their
I don't know.
Messiah. All
It's
they
not so
should have
much the
said.
Messiah. It's
All
not
they
so
should.
much the Messiah, but how to explain it to the people. Because it's a sort of the Jews would say, "Oh, so you've taken our Tanakh? Does this mean you agree with us? Or are you saying that you're all going to be Jews now? Really? I mean, what is the logic of it? And maybe the derivation of the Noahide laws in the Talmud was an attempt to say, okay, we're going to give you something. It can't be our religion, but here is yours. Just to make something of it. But it was, what year was it that the Talmud was completed?
Like 400 years after Jesus.
Oh, okay, well, I get after Jesus died. Yes, here's the 3rd or 4th century. Um, Yeah. So I guess, some rabbi thought, well, we have to give them something, or God knows what they'll do with our religion. But the fact is, by the time they thought of something, it was too late. Christianity had been adopted, and those Christians weren't going to, admit to any mistake. Can you see? It's like, well, we've done it now. We're not going to admit that we were wrong, because then everything will fall apart. Because it'll say, well, if you admit that thing, what else were you wrong about? What else did you make up? Huh? And so I'm afraid it has to wait until now. What, 1700 years later? After the revelation of the Quran, it's like, well, this cobbled together religion called Christianity, well, it no longer works, because if the whole point of it was to support the monarchy, it didn't work. You're no longer, you know, a continent of Christian kingdom, certainly not America. So give it up and, become Islamic republics.
I don't even understand, how does Christianity how does it uphold the divine right of kings? Because you're not supposed to. The thing is that Jesus tells you to give God's things to God, but Caesar's things to Caesar, which means religion and politics are not supposed to be mixed. So I don't really see how it gives anyone a divine right to kings. That just sounds like.
Well,
That just
Constantine
sounds.
adopted.
Well, I know, but
Well,
that's
I
not.
mean,
But that's not actually biblical. That's more kind of like extra biblical monarchs just saying that that's what's going on. But it's not like the Bible says this. I'm actually looking up divine right of kings right now, and none of it's biblical. It's all like
yeah,
edicts.
it's like, if you look at the historical origins of Christianity, it was used by an emperor who was a king, basically. I mean, a king
I
is
know, but
somebody who.
I'm just saying that divine right of kings is actually a weak argument because it's actually not really biblical. It's just it's not.
It's extra bit biblical.
Yeah, it's extra biblical, but I mean, it's not really fair to sit around and blame that on Christianity so much or make it the central theme of your discontent, because it's actually not really. I mean, I'm looking at the Wikipedia article on it, and none of it is biblical. It's all just like edicts and proclamations and beliefs in It's not really, because give Caesar things to Caesar and God things to God. At least that's Jehovah's Witnesses. That's why they don't. That's why you know the West got actually away from the divine right of kings and away from theocracy, was because of that verse.
Well, it's pretty conclusive that when Constantine only changed his religion, the religion of the Roman Empire, because his old religion was falling apart. And it was falling apart because there were all these constant civil wars, and there were all these sort of Roman warlords fighting each other. And after the fall of Rome, why do you think these barbarian kings outside of Rome adopted Christianity? Because they wanted to be something more than a warlord. They wanted to be thought of as good and righteous and deserving of divine protection, etc., etc. And that was why they adopted it. Because even if you did get your kingdom by force, just because you were really mean and good at fighting and really cruel, and it's like eventually you want people to think well of you, and so you need some myth that supports your right to be the ruler. And obviously it would help your government, because people think, oh yeah, you have the right to be there, you are better than us, you have the support of God. And this is not an idea that is exclusive to Europe, because the mandate of heaven is an ancient Chinese idea, but it's actually, in my view, and I think objectively, it is better than the divine right of kings. But the purpose of it is the same: the mandate of heaven. Have we discussed this?
Yes, the mandate of heaven, the Chinese mandate of heaven. Yes.
Yeah. So the idea is every emperor was deemed to have the mandate of heaven, which he may forfeit if he misgoverns his realm. And the signs of it being withdrawn would be, pestilence, invasion, rebellion, famine, and natural disaster. And these are signs of heaven's displeasure.
I remember hearing that, and I thought, that was dumb. Like, natural disaster means that you're, what if you have a great king and there's a flood? You're going to get rid of him? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, no. Usually, it's all those 5 things at the same time. I mean, just one little thing, is not going to unseat a king. But if they all come in, well, obviously, the more of them you suffer, the more weak you appear to be. But yeah, it makes sense. And then whoever takes over is deemed to have the mandate of heaven, and until he forfeits it. So this sort of worked much better than this stupid divine right of kings. But you could say that the mandate of heaven could be the Chinese conception of the Abrahamic God. And this idea is basically, well, you're the most powerful man in the Middle Kingdom, so vast, and that there's nobody who can beat you, but you better watch it, because there's somebody still above you, and you can't abuse your power, or bad stuff will happen. And that was hopefully made these emperors mind their P's and Q's a bit more. But the problem we have now, Vincent, is that we have a corrupt and incompetent ruling class who think that they can get away with all kinds of shit, and there's nobody above them. And as for the man upstairs, I think he can be conjured up into existence by invoking him, in addressing him, talking about him. And once you talk about it enough, people will just want to believe. I mean, they already do. Well, we already know Jews, Christians, and Muslims are supposed to already believe. But as to how many of them really believe, that's something else. But you see, these ideas are very easy to explain and easy to convey. It's not some, stupid, complicated, unprovable Jewish conspiracy theory that these people like to use. And not only are they, they are bores. The people like that, they just want to convince you that, their Talmud, their knowledge of the Talmud is greater than yours, and they won't stop talking, and then they get angry with you if you don't believe what they believe. But if you use the theological narrative, it's like everybody instinctively knows it. Even atheists, it's like, yeah, there was a story in the Bible about whatever, they'll kind of half know it. And they can change it easily. And I think people function in stories. I think people basically, they make up a story that they like, and then they act as if it were true. And that's what people do. Did you ever read Sapiens by Yuval Harari? Or hear about it anyway? Vincent's gone quiet. I can't hear you, Vincent. I'll talk to the chat then.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Yeah, you all know a Harari is someone that 50% of the population hates.
Yeah, because he's a married gay man who's an Israeli and a secular Jew. But anyway,
Yeah, but he's also. I
haven't read the book myself.
Yeah, he's also into I don't know. I think he's rather abrasive with people.
Yes, I know. But his book was a bestseller, and it's basically about the power of stories. Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind. It's on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is actually very helpful for giving summaries of books that you probably don't want to read. Shall I read it out to you?
No, I don't want to. I know who Yuval Noah Harari is, but read what out?
The summary.
Of what, Sapiens?
Yes.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
The book, focusing on Homo sapiens, surveys the history of humankind, starting from the Stone Age and going up to the 21st century. The account is situated within a framework that intersects natural sciences with social sciences. Summary: Harari's work places human history within a framework with the natural sciences setting limits for human activity and social sciences shaping what happens within those bounds. The academic discipline of history is the account of cultural change. Harari surveys the history of humankind from the Stone Age up to the 21st century, focusing on Homo sapiens. He divides the history of sapiens into four major parts. 1. The cognitive revolution, 70,000 BCE, the start of behavioral modernity when imagination evolved in sapiens. 2. The first agricultural revolution, around 10,000 BCE, the development of agriculture. 3. The unification of humankind, 34 CE, the gradual consolidation of human political organizations towards globalization. 4. The scientific revolution, around 1543 CE, the emergence of objective science. Harari's main argument is that sapiens came to dominate the world because it is the only animal that can cooperate flexibly in large numbers. He argues that prehistoric sapiens were a key cause of the extinction of one human species, such as the Neanderthals and numerous other megafauna. I guess he meant the dinosaurs. He further argues the ability of sapiens to cooperate in large numbers arises from its unique capacity to believe in things existing purely in the imagination, such as gods, nations, money, and human rights. He argues that these beliefs give rise to discrimination, whether racial, sexual, or political, and it is potentially impossible to have a completely unbiased society. Harari claims that all large-scale human cooperation systems, including religions, political structures, trade networks, and legal institutions, owe their emergence to sapiens' distinctive cognitive capacity for fiction. Accordingly, Harari describes money as a system of mutual trust and political and economic systems as similar to religions. Harari's key claim regarding the agricultural revolution is that while it promoted population growth for sapiens and co-evolving species like wheat and cows, it made the lives of most individuals and animals worse than they had been when sapiens were mostly hunter-gatherers, since their diet and daily lives became significantly less varied. Humans' violent treatment of other animals is a theme that runs throughout the book. In discussing the unification of humankind, Harari argues that over its history, the trend for sapiens has increasingly been towards political and economic interdependence. For centuries, the majority of humans lived in empires, and capitalist globalization is effectively producing one global empire. Harari argues that money, empires, and universal religions are the principal drivers of this process. Harari describes the scientific revolution as an innovation in European thought, whereby elites became willing to admit to and try to remedy their own ignorance. He describes this as one driver of early modern European imperialism and of the current convergence of human cultures. Harari also claims there is a lack of research into the history of happiness, positing that people today are not significantly happier than in past eras. He concludes by discussing how modern technology may soon end the species by ushering the genetic engineering, immortality, and non-organic life. Harari metaphorically describes humans as deities in that they can create species. There we go. You think you would read this book?
No. I don't want to read that book. No, but I mean, no. I mean, all subjects interest me. I'm a little bit more interested in like digging up dirt than other subjects. You know what I mean? I like to kind of like find like little problems or the problems and expose all the problems. That's my kind of book.
Well, I'm sort of doing that too.
Well, he's not like, it's not like, I would prefer to read something like exposing the Catholic Church or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, over, this is kind of like, oh, how do humans evolve? Hey, this is like, how do humans evolve? Where did we come from?
Well, I think what I'm doing is identifying a problem.
Well, what's the problem? I think he's just trying
and yet
to...
you don't have an official moral system that you can say, oh yeah, this is our rule book. And that is basically the purpose of religion. And you're saying, okay, we still trust our Congress to make up the rules as it goes along, which is crazy since you don't particularly trust your politicians anyway. So I don't know why you can't, why Americans can't understand what I'm trying to say. You understand what I'm saying, don't you?
Well, yes. I mean, if you don't have some kind of like theocracy where there's a single book that dictates what can be put into law, then yes, the laws can just change all the time.
Well, I mean, isn't this what's
Well, but
driving
they
people
can't break the
crazy?
Constitution. Just write a secular Constitution to make sure the laws can't break the Constitution. I don't see what the problem is. I mean, you're only
Well,
look.
you
The only
guys
thing
have
that
that.
you
You
can
were the
complain
first
about,
people to have that.
Claire, the only thing that you complain about is that you just want it so that. Well, why don't you just add to the Constitution that unmarried parents get whipped? What? I mean, why not just add that to your Constitution? That can be a secular law.
Okay, and then well, you might like to add a few others because you're doing the cherry picking thing again that cost those Muslim empires dear. They basically cherry pick. It's like, oh, we'll just follow the bits we like, and then
Well,
oops, crash and
so do
burn.
you. So does secular Quranism. It doesn't enforce all the laws. It only enforces the laws that it likes. And I'm just
No,
saying
no,
that.
no. I actually say this is how you should read the Quran. Just forget about the threats and promises of God. Ignore them, and the
Yeah, but
stories. Ignore them.
you don't
Just focus
you
on the
don't do
do's and
all the
don'ts.
laws. Not all the laws are necessary, and then you have your own interpretation. But also, you could just add into a secular constitution prostitution, slavery, whipping mothers or unwed mothers. Um, you could just
No, no,
add
unwed parents. I'm not.
just un,
Thank you for saying that. I'm not going to get. I'm not going to let unmarried fathers get away with it.
no, but just like just just add these laws as secular laws into the Constitution.
I don't know what you're worried about. I mean, because if
Yeah, but why
properly,
can't? Yeah, but like if you think that punishing unmarried parents is necessary in order to maintain a society, then you can just make a secular law against unmarried parents.
yeah, I do call it secular Quranism.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to even necessarily get that from the Quran. You could just come up with that idea on your own.
Well, the reason why I use the Quran is people are just going to say, "Oh, who are you to tell us what to do, Claire? You're only a
Well,
mortal and
people
fallible
think
woman,
that's a good
and you're not
idea.
even American," and crap like that. So I'm
Maybe
just,
people will think it's a good idea. Maybe if you promote it, people will think it's a good idea on its own, and they don't care that it came from the Quran. They just care that it's a useful idea that works.
well, but obviously I would need an American to help me do that.
Well, why can't you
I
do
mean,
it in
you're
Britain?
the
Why
obvious
don't you just
one.
do it in Britain then? Why don't you just do it in Britain?
Because nobody cares about this stupid little island that's just a US missile base whose leaders are, here today and gone tomorrow. Nobody listens to Britain. Everybody knows that really all the European countries follow the orders of America. So why just take it to the top and just go to the
Okay,
top
well, I
person?
mean, but look, Claire, you always blame it on if an idea is charismatic, then people will pick it up. And I mean, the thing is that there's plenty of people who had less resources than you that got a lot further and who had just as much opposition. They tried to make Christian Science illegal in certain states, and she still became the fastest growing religion in America. I mean, it's your idea, the idea of beating, you know, un, unwed mothers. Sorry, I'm disciplining my birds. Um, Unwed mothers is just not a popular. It's just not popular.
No, I know. So that's why, people are hesitating. And, I kind of know that even people who agree are a bit afraid of talking about it. Do you remember Tehran? Tehran
No, who's
Pool?
that?
Well, he's this black American Muslim. who has his own channel. He has a channel, and he's got a lot of, I think, 8,900 subscribers. Anyway, he lives in the UK, and his channel has a lot of Islamic academics. So I said, well, maybe they can talk about secular Quranism. And he point blank refused. So, well, I basically, said I thought it was cowardly and hypocritical.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know why they refuse to talk about it. I don't know why everyone acts like it's just so bizarre. I mean, I don't. Well, but the Noahide laws prepped me for it. I knew about the Noahide laws before secular Quranism, and I had already known that there were interpretations inside the Noahide laws that were very secular, like that didn't emphasize actually any religion, but more emphasized just following the law. And so it wasn't that off to me. But I think that I've opened up. I think I'm open-minded enough to. I mean, because I steal from it. Well, but I was also Beyondist, and that's part of Beyondism is stealing. I wanted to, I'm going to. I have that list of good ideas from the Quran, and I don't mind stealing them. Some of them are good ideas, and it's just do this and do that, and don't do this and don't do that, and I don't mind stealing it, but I steal from other places too. So I can't call myself a secular Quranist because I steal from Veda and Torah and Talmud and Veda and all these things.
Yes, I know. So you're going to call yourself, I don't know, a Brunoist or something. But
well, I guess Beyondist. If you're stealing from everyone and just incorporating it into a new ideology, then you're just a Beyondist.
Okay.
And I mean, there's nothing like, look, I mean, someone could steal secular Quranism and take all your rules, but then add them into another book of even more rules from different places. And then it's not really Quranism anymore. It's just Quran, provided some good ideas, but, it's and it really, what you're supporting, it really isn't Quranism because it's not even the full thing of Quranism. It's just, it's not full Quranism.
Well, you're just saying it's not the their kind of Sharia. That's what you mean.
Well, no, I mean it's just like even Muslims don't have to, worry about not eating pork and
No, it's up to them. But I'm
they
saying
can marry polytheists if they want. Like
well,
that's not.
and then they'll upset their parents and their family, but and have terrible marriages. I don't know, but I'm not going to pass a law against that.
I know, but I mean that is in the Quran that you're not allowed to marry.
Because here it is. Okay, this is the analogy. It's like Jews, they're not supposed to marry Gentiles, but they do. And then, who is to enforce it? Maybe the Gentile can say, okay, Gentiles are not allowed to marry Jews, right? They could say that. There's a law, but actually, there isn't a law that says Gentiles are not, in the holy book of Gentiles, there isn't a law in that holy book that says Gentiles are not allowed to marry Jews. So, but I mean, in the holy book of Jews, it does say that Jews are not allowed to marry Gentiles. But I knew there's a slightly complicated rule in the Quran that sort of, it's different for girls, sort of thing.
Well,
So
a Muslim man can marry a Jew or a Christian, but he can't marry a polytheist.
I think the rule is that a Muslim, okay, a non-Muslim man, if he wants, I can't remember. Maybe I'm a bit tired, but the rules for Muslim men and Muslim women are slightly different, because the idea is that a Muslim woman marrying a Christian or a Jew will have to require that her husband converts to Islam, or she will lose the favor of her family, who'll be so upset that she converted to Christianity or Judaism. So she can say, no, it's all right. I've just got, I've managed through my marriage to find us an extra Muslim. But it doesn't work the other way, i.e., a Christian man marrying a I'm sorry, I can't explain it. But the idea is that the wife's subordinate position means that she has to be specially protected. So if the Muslim woman wants to marry a non-Muslim man, he has to convert, because
Oh,
otherwise her living under his household will make her convert to his religion, and they want
you
to
know,
prevent.
I spoke to John Gishla about his conversion to Islam, and he admitted. So he basically only converted to Islam to marry his wife because he admitted he doesn't believe that Sharia law is from God or anything like that. He just did it. He actually doesn't believe that Sharia law is God's law. He just gave lip service and said, "I'm Muslim just to marry her," but he doesn't really believe any of it.
Okay. I mean, I'm not surprised at all, because he still talks like a Jew, but maybe less so. I mean, he does put on his Jewish airs. So where did you talk to him? Did you talk to him on a stream or something?
On a stream, yeah, I spoke to him on a stream, and I just said, is the Sharia from God? And he said
Okay,
no.
I'm glad you kind of made up.
Yeah, well, he didn't really make up. He still doesn't like me, and he still, wishes all homosexuals were dead. But, you know,
But at least you're still speaking. Well, what did you
well,
discuss?
I think that says something. You know what I mean? And the thing is that lots of Muslims do that. Do you know how many Muslims actually think it's shit, but they call themselves Muslims anyway? Like, that's the other thing that I miss about being a Jehovah's Witness. There's no such thing. Okay, wait. I will admit there are Jehovah's Witnesses that marry. They don't care about the religion, but they want a very, it happens all the time, where these men, they want very conservative wives that aren't going to sleep around on them, that don't drink, that don't smoke, that don't gamble, that don't dress like whores. And so lots of men convert to Jehovah's Witness just to get a wife. And it is a problem. It happened to my mother. Her husband did that. But besides that, 99% of Jehovah's Witnesses are there because they actually believe it. You know what I mean? They're not there. They're not there because, oh, well, it's just in my family, or
There's no such thing as a cultural Jehovah's Witness.
not really, not unless you're totally unbaptized. There's unbaptized Jehovah's Witnesses. They're not Jehovah's Witnesses. They can't call themselves Jehovah's Witnesses. They can call themselves students. They can call themselves people who are interested in Watchtower literature. There's those people. Yeah, there's people who drink and smoke but read the Watchtower. But there's not like Jehovah's Witnesses that are baptized that are doing that. They're usually very, very dedicated. And I've never met a Jehovah's Witness except for one time I met a Jehovah's Witness. When I was no longer Jehovah's Witness, I got into a discussion with a man who was a Jehovah's Witness, and he said, I do agree with a lot of they say, but he said, the reason I go is for my wife. But you know what I mean? But he was still following all the rules and stuff. I mean, he obviously, if he wanted to stay there, he couldn't be breaking any of the rules, and he would have to be attending all the meetings. And you know what I mean? But besides that, they're all there because they're dedicated to it and they believe in it. And yeah, there's no cultural Jehovah's Witnesses.
What did you talk to John about?
I can't remember. I didn't talk to him very long. But we did talk about him, that his conversion's not genuine. It's not It's not a genuine conversion. He just did it to get married, and I don't know what
Mhm.
that says about him.
Well, I guess I think he still believes in God, doesn't he? I mean,
Well, yes, but he doesn't believe that. He doesn't believe that Islam is like divine.
I
Okay,
don't think
whereas
he's even read the Quran, you know. I mean, I know when he was, still a Jew, he was saying pretty Islamophobic things and about burning the Quran and all that. So, he's not.
well,
I
he's
think a lot
not.
of people kind of think of it as, in terms of snobbery, it's sort of like, Muslims are stupid and immigrant culture. It's like, oh, but Jews, we're used to them, and we always think that they have one over us. It's like marrying up kind of thing, you know. But I think a lot of people think, oh, Islam is a step down. I mean, they won't admit it, I'm sure,
Well,
but it's,
I'm just saying that I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because it's like it's so just typical of like I am almost frustrated. I am frustrated I was raised Jehovah's Witness because it made me so much different from everybody. Like the thing is that I'm very much about my principles and I'm very much about like being true to them and I'm very much about like only being involved in things that I really believe are right.
Mhm. Well, I mean, so am I into it. I mean, I think my legal training kind of makes me
Hear me?
focus on principles, because I know they're important, in that,
Hello?
the meaning of words are important. Oh, you can't hear me?
Now
You,
I
you can't hear
can.
me? Right, right. No, I think principles are important. I mean, what's the point of, saying you have rules and not follow them? And, but, unfortunately, people have got to the stage where people just sort of, they're just so corrupt that they hope to get away with breaking the rules. And people don't enforce them, or people above them are seen to be breaking them. So we are getting to a dangerous phase of Western history, because when people think that there's no point playing by the rules, violence is the next step. I mean, it's quite obvious, really.
Well, but
Why bother fighting an election if you know it's going to be stolen?
I'm just saying that, I do, you know, it would have been easier just to have been raised like wishy-washy and to like, it's easier to be like that. I mean, the type of person that will change their religion to a religion they don't really believe in just to get married, to be honest, their life is probably easier. I mean, to be honest, John Gisela's life as an Orthodox Jew was very difficult. He was very isolated, and he probably couldn't find a wife, and all these different kinds of things. Which I thought he was married. That's why I'm confused. Wasn't he married?
Well, there was always some kind of girlfriend, but it just didn't happen. Well, until he finally found his wife, or that, there might have been some female, person, but it didn't happen until he, met and married his Muslim wife.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that, and I don't think that really even bothers most people. I don't think most people would even like. I mean, okay, do I really care that he doesn't believe in Islam? No, but it bothers me that most people are like that, that they don't have principles and they don't stand for anything.
Yeah, yeah, it bothers me too. And so, but the thing is, people are like that because America doesn't have an official religion, and it's only you can't have religious principles if you don't have religious. You don't have a religion, and religious principles are moral principles. So the point is, I guess, even if you don't believe, you have to pretend to believe. or at least show that you know what the rules are.
Yeah, but if you don't believe, you're not really going to do that. Obviously, I don't know if, if you don't believe, it's not going to last. And that's the problem. You're not going to be, Islam is not going to last if all Muslims are, well, I don't really believe in it, but I just practice it because for this reason or for that secular reason or for this rational reason or for that rational reason. It's not going to survive. I mean, you have to actually,
Yeah, which is why Sharia is necessary, because Islam without Sharia is a car without an engine, and they'll become like the Jews of the future, because they'll lose all their principles. They'll just have a few, just a dusting of Islam left. Maybe they might have the Quran on their bookshelf and just do nothing else. It would just be a distant memory, and I mean, so what is the point? And anyway, what is the point of religion? It's to form the basis of your legislation. That's what it's for. Otherwise, your ruling classes will be able to make up the rules as they go along, and you don't want that to happen to you.
No.
So it's whether you like it or not. I mean, maybe think of it as like carrying an umbrella because you don't want to get rained on. I mean, that's what it is. Nobody carries an umbrella for fun, but they carry it, in order not to get wet. I mean, if that's how you think of it, then you're more likely to be able to make sense of it, and you certainly shouldn't think it's some kind of precious family heirloom. I think religion should be considered to be analogous to a boiler. It's a boiler. You have to put it somewhere. And if your boiler is broken, you need to physically take out the broken boiler and put a new one in. You don't just sort of put the old boiler next to the new boiler.
Yeah. Claire, I have to go. I have to go now. But
All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Well, how about you?